Good afternoon, President, Fellows and members. Now, I promise to keep this presentation to the 15-minute mark, which has been set by Tony. I'd also like to leave a bit of time at the end as well for questions and queries. So, first slide up. This is me here, actually a bit slimmer as well because for some reason all the photos have gone and narrowed themselves, so I'm a bit taller and leaner than I normally am. But this is right outside the forum, along with Faye, who came from Palmerston North. She was also representing New Zealand over in Hiroshima. So, my trip to Hiroshima will be a trip that I'll remember for the rest of my life. It was one of the most amazing experiences that I've ever been on. I've never been farther than Australia, so Japan was a completely different world for me. We also had a stopover in Taipei, which was just absolutely mind-blowing. The volumes of people, traffic and smells and noises was just absolutely overwhelming. Something that we do not see here in New Zealand. The tour guide that we had in Taipei asked us where we all came from, and I said, "Oh, we come from New Zealand," and he said, "Well, where is that? I'm not quite sure where that is." I said, "Well, Australia, New Zealand." And he goes, "Oh, Australia, yes. And I asked him, I said, "How many people live in Taipei City?" And he goes, we're up to 13.5 million people now, I believe." And I had to think, and I said, "That's actually 4 times the size of our entire country." And he goes, and he has a bit of a laugh to himself, and he goes, "Oh, that's why I've never heard of you guys." When first landing in Japan, I, maybe pig-headedly, actually expected a lot more people to speak English. Partly because I've been told in my youth that everyone in Japan learns English in school and so they can all speak it. But I was actually quite wrong. The Japanese are very afraid of speaking English, and I later learned that it was actually because they are afraid of making a mistake. They do not want to embarrass themselves by saying something that might be offensive or rude. So what they do is, instead of speaking back, they'll nod and they'll point and they'll do those sorts of things. So that was quite different for me. So, second slide here. This is the other mad Rotarians that I went with. I was actually surprised they were all younger than me, except for one of them. And I was expecting other people, maybe middle-aged, slightly older, going with me. But it was a whole bunch of young people. And so there's a mixture there from Rotary, Auckland. One was from a little town called Glenorchy, which is down south somewhere, about 200 people, which I've never heard of before. They assure me that they've been put on the map because they have their first set of traffic lights going in a week's time, apparently. They don't have roundabouts yet though, but they have traffic lights. So this is a picture of myself with our Commander-in-Chief, Mr. President Tanaka. Now this poor man at the banquet here, he was trying to get out of the room because he'd been there for about 4 or 5 hours. But every 2 steps he took, he was stopped in photo after photo after photo after photo. So I think by the time he got to me, he was probably a bit fed up by it and just stood there and said, "Right, sure, hurry up and take the photo." But of course it was said in Japanese, so I didn't know what he actually said. But the forum itself was on a scale that I'd never seen with regards to a Rotary event. There were 2,500 members there, and all were from different countries and cultures. There was a large amount of Japanese people there, but there were Americans, there were Australians, there were other Polynesian groups there were some from Africa as well. And we were all there in the name of peace and how to understand and achieve it. One of the things that the speakers at this forum held very dear to themselves, a lot of them were Japanese of course, was not to repeat the atomic disaster that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They had a lot of stories that were told to us all about family members or great-grandparents who had experienced the blast and survived. And there were a lot of stories from the second-generation survivors. Now, they were very, very interesting because they talked about how they were shunned after the bomb went off. weeks after the bomb went off. The reason being is that so many of them were deformed and actually had long-lasting disabilities that if you married someone who was what they called the hibachu, you were going to be a second-class citizen, because what then started happening was people who were pregnant at the time had children and babies which were deformed or had disabilities and died of cancers and things like that. And so the Japanese population shunned them. It was only in the 60s and 70s when Hiroshima was pushing itself to become the peace capital of the world that an American lady who had spent a lot of time there working with the people who had been affected by the bomb, that she stood up in front of what was, I believe at the time, 12 Japanese mayors and businessmen, and actually told them they will never be the capital of peace. The reason being is because how can you be the capital of peace if you can't even look after the survivors of the event which you proclaim has changed you? And that's when things started to drastically change, because they agreed with her. They said, well, actually you're right. You know, how can we promote this when we can't look after our own people? And that is when they then put into effect programs which actually look after the people who have all the side effects of it. And they've also got a program now which means that the last remaining survivors of the blast are actually paired up with young people, and once a week these young people have to spend an hour with these older people to make sure that the stories can be learned and that the lessons can be passed on to the next generation, so it's not forgotten. So at the end of the forum, we actually had a session where everyone was given doves, and we were all released at the same time. There were actually many more than what is displayed in this photo, but New Zealanders being New Zealanders, we got stuck inside, and we were some of the last ones out, so we had our own little ceremony of releasing about our 15 doves there, but everyone else had released them and they all floated over the river. Part of the forum was we actually broke into smaller groups and paired up with some of the speakers, and we were able to choose which aspect we wanted to focus on. Now, the group that I was with, we focused on the areas of financial stability and prosperity and how that actually affects a peaceful nation and a peaceful world. And the clear message that came from that is that if people feel valued in their society and not treated as a second-class citizen or an underling, then there is a lot less resentment towards others locally and internationally who may have more. And there are a lot of examples of, say, the Western world where we purchase a branded t-shirt for $49.50, for instance, and the labour component is as low as 3 cents. Now, of course, on the surface that is not fair at all, but part of the problem is that in many developed nations now, we insist on cheaper and cheaper goods, and more of them. And of course that's pushed by globalisation and becoming more connected, which on the one hand assists peace by promoting ideas and values around the world and educating people on differences, but on the other hand actually does create these greater inequalities. So we actually didn't have too many answers, because at the end of the day we want cheaper goods, but we also don't want slavery or minimum or very, very minimal amounts of money being paid to workers. So that was a really, really difficult discussion that we had around how we could actually change that. And the answer that we came up with was actually having awareness around where we're buying our products, which we just currently do not have. Japan is actually a great example of a nation which loves shopping. I also travelled to Osaka, Kyoto via the high-speed bullet trains, and was absolutely amazed at every train station was like a giant Westfield. The Japanese population loves to shop, and it must be their national pastime, because no matter where you go there are shops upon shops upon shops for every product known to man. And of course Hiroshima is only a city of about 1.1 million, so they're not even a large city in the scale of things in Japan. So this is from the Peace Park in Hiroshima. Obviously the famous building which did survive the blast. They're actually doing some reconstruction on it at the moment to try and make sure that it lasts for another generation. But when I was standing outside this building, it was a very eerie experience in the fact that people were in this building and that a huge atomic blast literally vaporised them. And this was the only thing left standing. And one of the tour guides was explaining to us around some of the images which you do see around Hiroshima, which are people walking around with their hands out like this, and very, very deformed. And the reason behind that was when the blast went off, a lot of their skin melted off their bodies, and so it was hanging off their arms. And the only way for the pain to subside a little bit was actually keeping the arms above the heart, so that not as much blood would be pumped through to it. So you see a lot of artwork which is very, very emotionally gut-wrenching, actually, of people walking around almost like zombies with skin, etc. hanging off, and they have a lot of it in the museums as well. And they have a lot of items such as big steel bells and bell towers and things that have been reduced to just a tiny little molten ball of steel. And one of the great side effects of this forum was actually meeting all of the other Rotarians. There were 2,500 of them. They were all mainly young people. And it was just an amazing situation where you realise just how good Rotarians are. We really are one of the best bunches of people around the world, especially when we get together en masse, because we tend to look after each other. And it was very apparent because over there it seemed that all the Canadians and the New Zealanders and the Australians sort of banded together and sort of looked out for one another. And I don't know whether that's a deep underlying Commonwealth aspect there, but for some reason the Americans tended to stick to themselves, whereas all the other Commonwealth people tended to stick with each other as well. And it also made me understand as well how hard it must be for foreign visitors coming to New Zealand, because you'd go up to a Japanese person to ask for some help or in a shop, and you might say a few words in Japanese, which you get pretty good at saying a few words, and then of course they start blasting you with Japanese words back again, and you don't have a hope in heck of figuring out what they're saying. So you then do a lot of hand waving and pointing and everything, and it made me realise that when a foreigner comes up to me and asks for help, rather than bombarding them with words, actually keep things very simple. And asking them such as, I think we were after umbrellas at one point because it started raining. So we went up and we sort of said umbrella, umbrella. And then the person started going blah, 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 and pointed us down to a jacket store. And we were there going, no, umbrella. And of course a whole bunch of words came flying out. But in the end, all we wanted to hear was a few simple words to help us out. So the main message that I took from the forum was that peace begins with me and peace begins with you. And this is what President Tanaka pushed really heavily throughout the forum. And I believe that's partly why he wanted us all to get together en masse from different countries and cultures. The reason being is that if we can understand each other more by intermingling with each other, then we can actually be more inclusive ourselves and understand why things are done in the way they're done, and also then start promoting it. Because without knowing it ourselves, we cannot promote it. So, that covers the area around the forum. And I do have a few other bits and pieces around, should anyone be going to Japan? Has anyone actually been to Japan here? Oh, right, okay. I thought maybe 3 people might put their hands up. I had a situation in a clothing shop. I went into a clothing shop and I thought, oh, these look nice shirts, these look nice suits, I might pick 1 or 2 of these up, because usually it's quite hard to find these sorts of things in New Zealand for my size. So I went in there and picked up or pointed to a shirt, should I say, and say, oh, try that one on. So the lady comes over and she measures up my arms and my neck and everything like that. She runs away and she pulls out this shirt and comes out, it's a blue shirt, and I try it on. And I go, oh, no, this fits okay, little tight. And she goes, oh, so she runs away, comes back again and brings another shirt, and this time it's a white one. And I tried it on and it's still too tight. And then I said to her, oh, no, it's still too tight, bigger, me big. And she goes, oh, absolutely. And so she goes away, comes back again, and I try on another shirt, and it's the same problem. then I say to her, and I break it down as slowly as I can, you know, bigger needed, bigger needed. She goes away, and then I hear this rattling in the background, and I have a look around the corner, and there's actually 10 machinists all on these machines, all rattling away their sewing shirts. And I thought, oh hell, I hope she hasn't actually purposely gone out there to make me one. But she comes back about 10 minutes later with her assistant, and they're laden each with about 20 shirts. And I said, oh, just one. One will be sufficient, you know, one's enough. Try it on, and of course, still too tight. And she finally went away, and she got their manager along, and I said, look, the shirt's too tight, can I have bigger size? They have a chat amongst themselves, and they finally come and they said, oh, we're really embarrassed, sir, but you've already got the largest shirt on in the shop. And of course I thought, oh, okay, well, we'll leave that one there, I'll buy a tie instead. But this happened a few times in shops where I went to go and try on things, and I was the largest person, largest sizing that they actually had. So anyone who's larger than me, don't attempt to buy clothes over there, because it's not a happening thing. So I managed to find one shirt, which is still a little tight, which is this one, which is why I specifically wore this one. But this is an extra, extra, extra large in Japanese sizes. Anyway, I shall end my speech there, and if anyone has any questions, please fire away. Any sumo wrestling? I didn't see any. Maybe the shirt ladies thought I should do it. But no, I didn't see any.
You missed something.
Oh, really? I did not see one piece of sushi while I was over there as well. It was very, very interesting. They're very into these big pancake things, which they throw vegetables in, and Brussels sprouts and meat and bacon and barbecue sauce, and so everywhere you go are these big, big pancake, savoury pancakes. So if you ever go over there, do prepare for that. But food is very, very cheap, including alcohol. So if you do want to have a good time, go over to Japan for that. President Tanaka, when he did his presentation, he was saying that it's all well and good inviting the older people here and talking to them, but he said they already know a lot of them. He wanted young people to be here because he's worried about the message not being continued on. So that is why there was a great big push for younger people, and it was very, very evident. Very, very evident. At least 75% of the people were under the age of 30. That's a good question, actually. I did try and get myself invited to local clubs, but the problem is that none of the clubs were in English, and they did push me away from actually doing it. They thought I wouldn't enjoy myself because I was young, and also because I couldn't speak Japanese. So I didn't actually get to see how they run their clubs internally there. But I think we're already doing a lot of what was being promoted, which was actually getting involved with the younger people. One thing they definitely did push is using technology and new communication methods, because because that is how clubs will grow in the future, is by communicating in different ways. The most striking thing was the wax figurines of the people walking like that, with the skin hanging off them. That was really, really chilling. Really, really chilling. And you go into this room where it's all very dimmed, and the reason they do that was because after the blast there was a huge, huge cloud which covered the city, so it was actually pitch black in a lot of the regions, and so they dimmed the room, and you could actually see red glows of people in absolute agony, and obviously with skin hanging off their bodies. So they really made the impression that you did not want this to happen again. There was absolutely no way that you could have this happen in a modern city.